So how is the campaign going? I see you're well ahead.
Why are we 10-something points down with a month to go?
Honestly, it's old hat at this point.
Yeah, but the kid is only 10 points behind you.
I'm not sure you're even qualified to be in this race.
That just shows how out of touch she is, really, and it underlines the need for a new generation of young leaders who, forgive me, aren't going to be dead in 20 years.
They say the next!
Dee, we have a family emergency. Insufferable little prick.
Reminder, she was in a throuple and I have evidence.
Evil little troll.
That is all just a little bit of history repeating.
Hateful double-dealing. I am not giving up.
Just because some 22-year-old fucking rich kid.
I intend to quid pro quo Peyton's tiny little hiney. If you don't want this to come out, call off your dogs. We're destroying him. You'll thank me later.
One issue, the climate. Hit it hard.
Our generation is going to save this planet.
Emerson College poll came out. It has you down 29 points.
You just aimed a little too high, that's all. Run for a school board or something. Work your way up.
I shouldn't have to rely on polling numbers to judge if I'm being true to myself or not. That would make me a terrible person.
Is your motivation for governing to empower the powerless?
Yes.
Doesn't sound like a terrible person to me.
Well, I can't change the world if I don't win.
Yeah.
I'm a winner.
A month ago, we were up 30 points. Now we're tied. Time to generate countermeasures. Why don't you come and work for us?
We are bugging our political opponents now.
I have dirt. She went home and watched every Nancy Meyers movie, even the bad ones.
It's complicated, and something's got to give.
There are no bad ones.
People really want to live in those kitchens. Hold on.
Get over yourself, Peyton. They're good movies.
This isn't even a love triangle. It's like a sex pentagram.
Do you think she's working as a double agent?
We need to begin an affair with her. I'm pregnant, too. Get out.
God, my sperm's as ambitious as I am.
You, my friend, are canceled.
It isn't over.
That's not lying. That's politics.
There are jobs that feed the ego, and there are jobs that make a difference. Politics does both.
Love you to bits.
All I have is my career, my dream.
I am a fighter. I will do what it takes to win. Do you know anything about spicy lube? I need you to go get me some. We're gonna call this Operation Spicy Lube. Oh, yeah. Oh. You have got to try it. It's, oh boy, spicy.
This man has an amazing energy. He's powerful, and he has such a beautiful smile. He's created a one-man show, Hi, Are You Single? And it is incredible. I watched it twice. And from there, I mean, he is on one of the biggest hits on Netflix, The Politician. Has visited with us at Meet the Biz a few years ago and Performing Arts Studio West. He's an actor, a playwright, an autobiographical performer, Ryan J. Haddad.
Hi, David. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for that introduction.
Oh.
I think I visited you when I was filming season 1 of The Politician. So that was why I was in LA, and that's why we were able to do the in-person workshop with Performing Arts Studio West.
Right.
And your students. So I'm grateful to have met them all and happy to be talking to them again through the screen.
Well, I have to, I remember that day, and you were gracious enough to do part of your one-man show. And
yeah, I think I did a few different shows, pieces from a few different shows. Yeah.
Right. I remember, and it was, I wish I had a camera, because when there's one line that you said, what is it? Are you horny? And everybody said, yes!
That's
and
right.
it was like the whole room like this. It was wonderful.
Well, I had never really done the show or parts of the show for a room only of disabled people exclusively. And what I learned from that experience was we are so starved for intimacy and affection and human contact, non-familial human contact, that it excited them and it exhilarated them, but it also like shocked them that somebody would even bring the concept of sexuality into a space like that for them to consume. And I remember they were like, they would laugh every other line, because I would be saying something sort of, adult, and they were not used to hearing those things
right.
in their environment, even though it's a room full of adults, right? People, visitors, guests, whatever, didn't feel that they were the audience for that. And of course they are. And of course they have their own stories and their own lives filled with desire for romance and sex. It can be one or the other or both. I'm doing a lot of hand gestures.
No, I do it too. What I'm
but
saying
it was a really interesting, and I remember having to sort of pause and say, now this whole speech is going to be filled with this content. So, not every line is a punchline. It's okay to just, you don't have to laugh every time I say a bit of sexual language. But they were, I think, really open and appreciative to the content, because it wasn't something that they, whether at home or at your academy or whatever it is, they weren't exposed to that before. And that is part of the reason I do the show, is because we take disabled people out completely of the conversation around sex and desire and intimacy and love, really romantic love.
Yeah. What you do is so brilliant, because you are someone who puts it all out there, so-called balls to the wall. I mean, you don't hold back, and it's so refreshing. I mean, some of the people that I admire most are like that. I know Bruce Vilanch speaks his mind, and it's like, oh, I love being around Bruce. And when you got up there, and when I saw your complete show the other night, I was like going, whoa. I mean, there's no filter in a way. It's like what you're feeling, and it's so refreshing and so wonderful. And I think when you did come to the studio, it did break through, I don't know if I want to say a glass ceiling, but it broke through barriers for a lot of the people watching it. I mean, they had been exposed to some, but to only a certain level.
Right. I'm not, there's nothing about my work that's delicate or precious. Yeah. So, to me, when you say speak your mind, it's just, well, this is it. This is what I've come here to say. And I'm not going to dance around it so that the audience is unsure of what I'm getting at. You need to hear it from me. And
have you always been this way?
I think that, yeah. Like I'm a strong-headed, opinionated person, right? And I was from childhood. I think that there's something about taking space on a stage for a period of time that makes me a little more revved up, because it's like, if I'm going to command your attention or demand your attention, then I have to earn it. And I can't earn it by just being polite. And I can't earn it by saying things that I think you want to hear, or that you're used to hearing, or that fit your narrative of what disability is. because that is boring. And what is the difference between me and 20 other people doing that? But I just feel like, no. So it took kind of coming to New York, which I moved here right after college, right, to really begin to have some experiences that were really strong and good and meaningful. And so I remember getting a note from an artistic director at one of the theaters where we had developed it, which is like, you know, this is a play about sex and disability and there is no sex. The beginning has the FaceTime encounter, but that's it. You know, there was no other, and everything else was a near miss, but there was no like, and I had this moment with someone. So then we got to, there is what I call at the end, near the end of the play, right, maybe you could call it the 11 o'clock number. It's right before the final toast. It's not a number, but I write it, it's written sort of in verse like a poem. It's not a poem, obviously. Maybe it is. It right, doesn't rhyme, but it's formally different than the rest. And it is the quote, you know, the sex scene that comes near the end of the play. Yeah. And I wrote that, A, as a result of the note of there needs to be more sex, but B, that was like, you know, a pretty vivid experience that happened for me. And I think the first time I performed it was 2 months after it happened. Or maybe even drafted it and read it out loud for the first time 1 month after it happened. But like, in order to have a scene, because I'm an autobiographical performer, I needed to have experience, I needed to continue to have more experiences. And it's not like I went out that night soliciting a scene out of the gentleman that it's about. But, you know, you think you're on a first date, you think it's going well, you think that you're vibing and that you have chemistry, and then suddenly it turns and you go, oh, okay, well, I guess I got a story at least.
Well, what's so wonderful too about you is that even when you're not talking, I remember this part in the show where you're sitting on the couch and you're buttoning up your shirt. And I feel all the stuff that you're feeling there. You know, when they say the you know, acting is reacting, when you're not speaking, you're so full, which makes this even more special.
Thank you. There are very few moments in the play when I'm not speaking. So that is an intentional, you know, and it's a performance. I am acting, especially at this point, having done the play. This is our first full production. It's a digital production. You can stream it on demand, as David has done. But even though I've never had like a full production with a full set and a full design and, you know, lots of rehearsal, I've toured it around the country in various places. And I've been performing it for 6 years in March. So starting at my university, Ohio Wesleyan, where I went to undergrad. And the more distance that I have between the things that happened, the easier it is. It's not an easy show to do. Like, it's not an easy performance, but I am able to give you emotion. I'm able to communicate emotion to you without having to like torture myself inside. It's not like emotionally damaging as a human to be recounting these experiences. I know how to play it so that you think I'm tortured or having pain or experiencing pain, but that I'm, you know, then I come off stage and it's like, well, what are we having for dinner? You know?
Well, and I mean, you take us on a ride. I mean, the whole show is a ride, and what is it? What you did too, with it being now in quarantine.
Sure.
That was another question that went through my mind. Oh my God, were you a little scared that you were going to have to be, you know, you have to be COVID tested, or were you like, hey, let's do this?
Well, I'm a member of the Screen Actors Guild and Actors Equity. The guidelines that they used for me was the same guidelines that had been used and were being used for the major television shows on network, cable, and streaming that had resumed, which was a zone system of A, B, C, and certain people were tested 3 times a week, and certain people were tested once a week, and there were 6 feet, and there were distancing, and there were all of these rules that, yes, I was terrified. I'm not going to lie. Yeah. I was home with my parents for the 8 months of the pandemic in Ohio, and the first ounce of travel that I had was to go to Woolly Mammoth to film in Washington, D.C. Yeah. And their company manager was so kind. I love her. Her name is Eleanor Zapp. And she picked me up in Ohio. She drove 6 hours, stayed overnight, and picked me up because I didn't want to get on a plane.
Yeah.
So she drove me there. And once we got into the groove and once I got over the fact, like, I'm around people, what? I was put at ease, and also the guidelines were such that no one in our grouping, ever tested positive. And so we were able to move forward without interruption. And I did feel very safe, but I was nervous to even take the leap to go. Became less nervous when it was clear that live theater was not going to happen, and that instead it was going to be a filmed performance.
And what I loved about that is you incorporated it so well that it brought us into this time and how we're all distanced. Not all of us, but there's so many of us who can't go on dates, who can't do that intimacy. And I'm not going to say everything that goes on in the show, but there were moments like that. There's a middle part where it's improvised, and it's like, it just, again, it took you on another ride. I'm like getting my hairs are standing up, but it was such a wonderful show. I mean, I had heard about it before from you when you,
of course, sure.
But and to see you, and going back to that part where you're not, jabbing yourself every night emotionally. But you, through that journey, you take us to a sad place, and then you turn the corner to make us laugh about something.
Oh yeah, that's what I do in almost everything I write, because I think it's very powerful to take you usually to the funny place first, and then the dark place, and keep bouncing you back and forth so that you don't. So that it's not expected. I write autobiography, so I don't necessarily write for plot. Mm-hmm. It's not like this is a suspense thriller or anything like that. But the way I surprise you is through the turns that I take, so that your reactions are unexpected.
And your viewpoint of your own life, how you see the funny out of the sad.
Right. No, I mean, yes. Sure, sometimes, not every time. There's just a level of, it's a control of the story by choosing what goes where, but sometimes the sad is just sad, and sometimes the funny is just funny.
Yes.
And to conflate the two, is slightly like, I'm not going to make everything that is sad funny just to make you all more comfortable, right? Yeah. Sometimes you just have to sit in it and feel those feelings.
Now, what would you say? I mean, we have writers and performers at Performing Arts Studio West and Meet the Biz. Let's say somebody said, I want to write a show. What should I do it? Why? What should I do? Should I do what you do? Some people think, I have to do this or that. What was your suggestion, or what would your suggestion be to somebody who wants to write their own show?
Well, the first thing is like, what is the story? Like, it's not just, I want to write my own show about my life, period. You have to narrow the scope of your life and find themes and a structure that feels compelling to watch and to perform. It can't just be this is the day I was born, and then today is February 5th, 2021. Like, you can't do that. You can't go through your entire life in an hour or 90 minutes and have it feel like a meaningful piece of art. And so you've got to carve out, okay, this is the show in which I'm going to talk about these 2 or 3 things that are interconnected, and I'm going to, craft it in such a way that this is how the audience is supposed to feel, and when and why. And you've got to really marinate on the why are you telling this set of stories. And not just like, I want to make a show in which I perform. Because if you do that and you haven't crystallized a point of view or a reason that the audience is supposed to care, then it feels just like vanity. And it feels indulgent instead of feeling like you are giving something.
Yeah.
Your most that's number 1. And number 2 is absolutely one cannot begin with an hour-long or 90-minute show, especially if you've never done it. So you have to take, and if you look at Higher You Single as a script, there are a dozen stories, 15 stories, 20 stories. I haven't counted recently, but they're all just individual stories that could, in theory, be told on their own.
Yeah.
So, and then they are arranged and strung together and gelled in such a way that it doesn't feel like, oh, this one blends into the next and the next and the next, but they're really just one. It's really just one story at a time. And that is how I would begin the process. One story to remember, one memory to recount, or 2 memories that you blend together for some reason, but start with a 3-minute chunk or a 5-minute chunk, and then transcribe it, audio transcribe it, and then and type it out then, and then look at it and say, well, this I can cut, and this I don't need, and this paragraph can go first, and then this one third. And you can't do that with 50 pages or 40 pages or 60 pages. You've got to do one story at a time, because it becomes too massive if you're trying to do sweeps and edits of the whole thing at once. And then once you have 5 or 6, you can say, well, oh, I think these will go together nicely. And maybe this is the order that I'm going to tell them in. And then you go, what is missing? Like, what are the gaps in the story that still need to be filled in?
Yeah.
And then you find additional material based on the needs of what you have available to you already.
What do you remember the first piece of art or first story that you wrote? And how old were you?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I think in preschool, I had a crush on a girl, and I'm gay, as all there is, but I was like, 3, and so I was, or 4 or 5, and I was trying to not be gay. Also, I was a kid, so who knew what gay even was?
Yeah.
And there was a girl I had a crush on, and so I remember like making with crayons, like making a little book, like a picture book, and it was called Chelsea's Day, and Chelsea was the girl. I couldn't identify Chelsea in a lineup if you tried to make me, but I remember that was like probably the first story. Then I started to like butcher and rip and adapt plays that I did with my family based on like Disney movies, and other plays and musicals, and that was a lot of that was part of how I was like writing for theater, but I wasn't at all. But I was learning. It was messy and not good, but I was a kid and I was infatuated with theater and performance. So, and I knew I needed to make, if I wanted to use my family, they needed to have a script to read. So even before I knew how to read, I was trying to make something up. And I'm also thinking of, like, I think in second grade, I did a report on my grandfather who had died, and it was about him serving in World War II. And those were the earliest stories. Then there was, in fifth grade, we did something called When I'm 64, which is a Beatles song, but we had to make a story about what it was going to be 64. And I think I was 11 at the time. So that was what, that was a story. Those are all like young person stories. The first piece of performative storytelling that I did was in a workshop with Tim Miller, who is based in Los Angeles. The wonderful performance artist, Tim Miller, who has been a mentor of mine and continues to be. And he was doing a workshop at my college. And so the story I told was about how the professors at the college were not making the space in their program to accommodate a disabled person, even though I was on a theater scholarship and they recruited me and they were excited to have me there. Only 1 out of 4 professors really knew what to do with me when it came to being on stage. They knew what to do with me off stage, but that's not where I wanted to be. So I made this short piece for Tim's workshop about that, basically calling the professors out and what it is to be a performer and what it is to be a performer who needs to perform with the walker. Right. And he said that was great and that he adored my work and wanted me to continue to pursue solo performance. And that the next time I did a workshop with him, which would end up being that same summer, that was February, and then he invited me to New York for a workshop in the summer. But he said, next time you got to do it not just about being an actor who's disabled, it's got to be about being a gay man who's disabled, and kind of think about what are those implications.
Yeah.
So I think the first story that is in Hire You Single came out of his workshop at the New Museum in New York. It wasn't what I performed at the end of that workshop week, but it was just an exercise that I did in the middle of the week that everyone only saw one time. And it was when I'm talking to a guy and he says, and I tell him I have cerebral palsy, and he says, I can't be cool with that. We call it the Dylan story. He's one of the only people that I name. I don't know what his last name is, and I've never heard from him or seen him again. So I don't feel any guilt about using his first name. But that was, I think, and I've misremembered it because people have asked me recently as part of this press tour, and I always thought the first story was performed in my theories of performance class in junior year, which would have been, 9 months later, was the football player story. But I think I'm remembering now for the first time in years that the first real story, I did it in a circle, and it was the I Can't Be Cool With That story.
It's, there's so many good parts on this, on your show. I mean, even you have that other character in my own mind of your drink. I mean, that to me, that's like another.
Oh, here's the margarita. Yes. I mean, the margarita changes the locations. Like that's what, when I take a sip, everything changes.
Right. So. But it felt like, in a way, it had a personality to it too, which I loved. I mean, you have done so much. I mean, you performed in The Maids. You had My Straighties on television, Bull, Madam Secretary, and of course, now in Ryan Murphy's The Politician.
Yeah.
Which I last week I had a Ryan Haddad week because I watched the whole second season, and whenever you came on, I went, I mean, you have such a presence. I mean, it's everybody on that show is like their characters are so defined and so powerful. What was it like? I mean, how did you get in the door to The Politician?
And this is absolutely a lesson for anyone in the entertainment industry that's looking for inclusivity, right? I got in the door because the breakdown said seeking actors with cerebral palsy to play high school. The character was written to have cerebral palsy. Simple. That's it. They wrote a character to have cerebral palsy. And it happened that my character did not focus very much on his disability at all. At all. Other people talked about it. The other kids, said snide remarks about the special ed class and stuff like that. But it was not the center of Andrew's universe at all that he had cerebral palsy. And I only say the words cerebral palsy once in 2 seasons. And that's when I'm smoking the joint.
Is that a joint?
It helps with my seizures.
Oh. Yes, right. I heard that.
You dumbass, I don't get seizures. I have cerebral palsy, and I like getting high.
And it's the punchline of a joke, which is, I think, where he and I are kind of similar, is that there's a dryness to him, which yeah. I'm a little less dry and a little more big, but I definitely, as you know, like twist things to either punch you or get the laugh. And I sort of, as soon as I read it, I was like, I know how to do this. I was nervous because I didn't know if I was going to pass as much to be a straight guy who was in love with a girl. And I knew I needed to be, convincingly in love with a girl in the show. So I just deepened my voice as much as I could. Oh. For that first tape. I mean, I was miraculously heterosexual in the audition tape. I don't know so much on the screen, but it was fine in the audition. But I know that no one would have approached me for that role under any circumstances ever if they hadn't written the words cerebral palsy.
Well, the thing about that is too, I mean, there could have been many people. Well, there could have been a chunk of people who auditioned for that role, but it wasn't, you didn't get it because you had just cerebral palsy.
No.
Because you're one hell of a good actor.
Well, no, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm talking about truly on the business side of things.
Yes.
Which is who gets appointments for auditions. And now, because I've done season 1 and season 2, I'm getting tons of TV and film auditions that are not written to be disabled. Have I booked them? No. But I have a manager who adores me and I adore him and I will be with him forever, who does not limit me exclusively to disabled roles. And I know that there are lots of great talent reps who rep disabled people. I waited a long time and I never really I had a friend who was working as an agent at the time, who is now a manager. Her name is Elena Fian. She found the breakdown for The Politician, and we had been friendly for years, and we thought about working together, but maybe it's not going to work. I'm not sure. And then she saw the breakdown and said, do you still need representation? You'd be perfect for this part. And I said, yeah, let's if I get it, let's work together on season 1. And I'm so grateful to her because I didn't know anything about contracts or negotiating or any of that. And she really, helped me through the season 1 situation. Right. And then she left her agency to become a manager on her own. And so then I was back kind of looking for acting representation, permanent acting representation. And everyone said you have to wait until season 1 drops. And I was like, that feels, but I filmed it. But But the whole point is that nobody was going to see it for a year. Nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to know what I could do. Yeah. And then a wonderful casting executive and friend of mine, Lucy Cavallo, was meeting people, and she met a manager, former agent who was also becoming a manager, and she introduced us, and that's sort of how it happened. And so I think I committed to working with him like 2 or 3 weeks after season 1 had started streaming. And so everyone was right. Everyone who said, like, it doesn't matter if it's on your resume, it doesn't matter if it hasn't come out, no one cares, they were right, which was a terrible waiting game, because I went a whole year with, no one was calling me in for stuff that wasn't disability specific. And that is what I mean when of course I know that, like, I was able to act Andrew very well. He fit me as a character, and I am talented. Like, I'd be the first to tell you that I'm a talented actor, but I'm not naive enough to know that you don't get called in for a major streaming network just on the basis of, like, without any major television credits, which I did not have up to that point, unless either people know you or they need something very specific. Yeah. So the only reason I got on the docket was because they were specifically looking for cerebral palsy, which is why it's so important for writers to take the first step and say, I'm building a world. Worlds and the world includes disability. So my world should include disability too. And the other thing I'll say, I don't know how much, like, people will love to hear me say this. People don't get auditions all the time. If you're lucky enough to audition, how amazing. Not a lot of disabled actors are handed out auditions regularly and are taping all the time. So I understand, fortunate, especially fortunate now to have a manager who sees me for who I am and as a whole entity, including a writer performer, including an actor, various other things. Mm-hmm. And is not willing to pigeonhole me in the slightest way. Of course, if the perfect role that's disabled comes up, he's going to submit me for it, but he's also going to submit me for 10 other roles a month. And maybe I'll get 3 or 4 of those auditions or 5 of those auditions or something. Yeah. I don't really have 5 auditions a month, but I have a few a month, which is different than 1 every few months, which is what it used to be. Right. And so now we're getting to a point where I've learned casting directors are wonderful. They're extraordinary advocates. And I don't think I knew that arriving in New York just out of undergrad. I saw, perhaps unfairly, or casting directors have evolved a lot in the last 5 or 6 years, possible. But I had seen them as sort of gatekeepers and, like, barriers to the work. Now I'm learning that, like, they are so excited to have me audition for this part that isn't written to be disabled. How fun. And they can't wait to see my tape. And most of the time, they love my tape and they send it on to the producers or the creative team, the director, the writers, what have you. And then it stops there. Yeah. And I rarely get a call back for those roles that aren't written to be disabled, because I think it takes a lot for the people who've written the scripts, yeah, or who are directing it and have a vision in their mind of what they think it's going to be. It takes so much for them to say, oh, I'm gonna reconceive the role to be disabled. You don't have to reconceive. You don't have to reconceive anything. You don't have to change a word. No. You don't have to change a word. Exactly. Yes, the truth is, if I'm an actor, if I'm in a piece, and the character was not written to be disabled, yes, the moment I step on stage or the moment I appear on screen, the character is disabled. There's no, you can't, it doesn't, nobody's stupid. Like, hello, you can see me. I have cerebral palsy and I walk with a walker. Okay, great. But you don't have to change any words. Like, and I can do a hell of a great job. But that is the barrier that I'm finding, because I prior to the pandemic, once I started working with my manager, and then even into the pandemic when taping started to pop up again, it was like, oh, wow, I keep getting called in for the same casting directors. They really are fans of my work and they think I'm doing well because they keep asking me to do more. But it doesn't go beyond them yet. And so that is why, another reason I think it's very important, if you have the spark.
What brings you the most joy in your life?
Oh, wow. I mean, it's so trite to say, but family and friends. Family and friends.
I don't think that's trite. I think it's
what joy would there be without friendship? And my family, you know, are fiercely, steadfastly supportive of me and my work, have always been. I love them for being my family and, you know, and for loving me, but in many ways, they were my first teachers in theater, even though no one knew anything about it, like no one. But they agreed from the time I was 5 years old until the time I was 13 to do plays with me in the living room, in the backyard, and the stage of the community center. So I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't have a family who put on weird costumes and went out in the backyard and did plays that were not any good, but were bonding, deep, rooted family memories that none of us have forgotten and that mean something to all of them. It wasn't just about like, wasn't that nice for the kid? No, when you do something 10 times in 7 or 8 years, there's no way that it's not also going to impact their lives. But so they were my first teachers, really. And my family and friends. Because guess what? The industry has been shut down for a year. Theater has been fully shut down, and film and TV are just creeping back in. So I can't say that it's my art or performing, because I went almost a year without any of that. And who was there but, you know, family and friends to bring joy. And whether I was home in Ohio quarantining with my mom and dad, or it was my best friends who were states away, also traveled and dispersed because of the pandemic, you are nothing without those people. And if you come off stage at the end of a night and, you know, no one you love is there to greet you, then, you know, what's it for?
Yeah.
And I am, you know, I'm single. I'm continuing to seek romance. And the theme of Ryan seeking romance, I promise you, it continues through at least 3 more of my plays that have already been written. But you realize, especially now in this time, when, like, if you entered COVID without a lover, then you lean on others near and far. And, you know, they're the reasons that we survive, emotionally survive. You know, no one can help you can help by masking and social distancing and being safe and cautious, but no one can predict how or when the virus is going to hit and who they're going to hit, who it's going to hit. But in order to sort of make it through to the other side, you need companionship. And I'm learning that, like, yes, I want a boyfriend. That is not, as I say at the end of the play, that has not changed. But there are other deeply valuable just as valuable, sometimes even more so, forms of companionship, and the laughter and the people you can call and say, oh, this terrible thing has just happened and I just wanted you to know, and they'll cry with you. Like, that is better than any form of applause.
Oh, hi! You look absolutely terrific. I'm sorry for throwing you all in the deep end like that, darlings, but everybody knows the best way to find a boyfriend is masturbating on your phone with someone you met on Grindr. Hi. Are you single?
So how can everybody go and watch this performance of yours, this incredible performance?
It is streaming through February 28th through Woolly Mammoth Theater Company in Washington, D.C., and I Am a Theater Company in Los Angeles. And you can go to, I think both websites have access, but I've been told to spell out Woolly Mammoth, and that is WOOLLY mammoth.net. That's WOOLLY mammoth.net. And you buy your ticket, or rather activation link, to the stream, and then you can watch it at any time. You don't have to buy it you don't have to watch it when you buy the ticket. Your rental doesn't begin when you buy the ticket. Your rental begins when you click watch now or play now or whatever the interface says. I'm the writer, so I have not paid for my own ticket to my own show. But that is how to do it. You can stream it on demand at any time between now and February 28th. And you can buy your ticket in advance of when you're planning to watch it. So it's very flexible, and
you get 48 hours. You could watch it several times.
If you wanted.
Which I did.
Thanks, David. And thanks to everyone at Performing Arts Studio West. Please say hi to Diane and all the students, and give them my love, okay?